Hello, and welcome to the Soul of Football podcast. My name is Kevin Crump, and this is my independent 100% supporter funded project. My mission is to explore football fan culture in Europe, and especially Germany, and to explore the deeper meaning of football, the culture surrounding it, and to amplify the voices of the fans, especially the active fan scenes. This week we have a huge show and a lot to cover, including the fallout from the German Interior Ministers meeting, what happened, where things stand now, how the fans have won early victories already, and why they say to remain vigilant. We also have a story from Wolfsburg, where for the second season in a row, the police have taken heavy handed actions against traveling Union Berlin fans. We'll talk about both last season's incident and this past weekend, what happened, and I'll introduce you to the German Fanhilfe organizations and why they are important. From there, we'll head to Glasgow to talk about Celtic's indefinite ban of their main ultras group, the Green Brigade. I'll tell you what's going on and the impact it has had on the club, the fan scene, and the atmosphere at Celtic Park. We also have a trio of stories from Italy, Germany, and England concerning ticket prices and commodification of club identity, and what fans are doing to push back. We'll get into a major story from the French Riviera, where the Populaire Sud Ultras of Nice have after a confrontation with players and staff at the club training ground released a communique declaring to the club, essentially, you don't interest us anymore. And finally, we'll round out our news roundup by talking about English fans taking a page out of the German fan scene playbook. We'll check in on the 15-minute boycott by Wolves fans at their home match against Manchester United on Monday night. I'll also recap what I saw in this past week's matches and look ahead to the week to come, including my recommendations for the top atmosphere and culture matches that I'll be keeping an eye on. So we start in Germany with a recap and update on what's happened surrounding the Interior Ministers Conference and the fan protests pushing back against new unwarranted security schemes. In case you missed last week's episode, I'll take you through the whole thing one more time. Let's see if I can give you a nice and clean this time, tell you where things stand now. The Interior Ministers Conference is the regular meeting of Germany's federal and state interior ministers responsible for internal security, and that includes how police and the state deal with football and football fans. Since the 1990s, via tools like the NKSS, National Security Concept for Sport, and the ZAS, Police Incident Reporting, football has been steadily treated increasingly as a security problem. More stadiums, bans, more surveillance, and harsher stances on pyro. In 2023-24, the DFL tried to bring in a private equity investor, looking for about 1 billion euros for a share of media rights. This triggered huge coordinated fan protests across both the first and second divisions of the German Bundesliga. Fans across Germany met the proposed deal with weeks of protests, education and banner campaigns, and match interruptions with tennis balls, chocolate coins, and even RC cars loosed onto the pitch by Hansa Rostock and FC Köln fans, and RC planes flown around the pitch by the Freiburg faithful, and Hanover 96 fans attaching bike locks to the goalposts and crossbars prior to the kickoff of their match against HSV, one of which reportedly could have been opened with the combination of 50 plus 01, but they were instead removed with bolt cutters and an angle grinder. All in a unified action that brought together in solidarity virtually every fan scene in the top two divisions of German football. The fan actions forced the DFL in February of 2024 to drop their investor deal, proving once again that the fan scenes can win national battles when they act together. That success made politicians and police very aware of fan power, and football violence and security were officially declared a priority topic by both the Sports Ministers' Conference and the Interior Ministers' Conference. In October 2024, a summit in Munich involving the sport ministers, interior ministers, Federal Ministry of the Interior, the DFB, and DFL created the Joint Working Group, Federal States Open Working Group, Football Without Violence. The Federal States Open Working Group set up subgroups on stadium bans, stadium security, stadium alliances, and prevention. And by mid-2025, its interim report was passed up to the Sport Ministers' Conference, and then on to the interior ministers for political decisions. You can see how the German fans were able to get wind of this before it anything was able to be passed above their heads. Within this process, some interior ministers and police pushed a hardline wish list. They wanted fully personalized tickets, reduced away allocations, a central national stadium ban commission, and a rule to review bans within 6 weeks of any investigation. And expanded high-tech surveillance, possibly including facial recognition. The German Football Association, the DFB, and the German Football League, the DFL, publicly argued that German stadiums are objectively very safe, according to the official data, and opposed blanket measures like general ticket personalization and default cuts to away fans. And in fact, it was the ZIS data, the police reporting data, that showed that German football is actually getting statistically safer, which the police chief of Hamburg felt was grounds to call for more harsh enforcement directly citing those statistics that were showing it was going down and saying that that's why they needed more power. At the same time, the DFB and the DFL signaled they were open to more prevention, better funded fan projects, more professional security and fan officers, things that were already working well, and to some form of central oversight on stadium bans, provided that local commissions and due process remained, because right now the banning is at the local level with the individual clubs. These measures would make, which allows them to have personal relationships with the scenes and like know the fans and have a working relationship instead of a confrontational relationship, as tends to be the way with when the higher levels of police do the policing, as you'll find out shortly in our next story. In response, Fansen in Deutschland, a network of German fanzines, issued a joint statement warning that a central stadium ban commission would enable top-down control, making it harder to lift bans early and pushing harder interpretations onto local clubs. They sharply criticized plans to tie stadium bans to a 6-week rule after the start of an investigation, arguing this turns mere suspicion into punishment long before any conviction or clarified facts. They rejected personalized tickets and facial recognition as treating all fans like suspects and a massive violation of privacy that would easily spread from stadiums into the wider public life. They defended pyrotechnics as part of fan culture that can be handled in negotiated, safer ways, and insisted that football is safe, an assertion supported by the government's own statistics. Meaning current talk of escalation is more about symbolic politics than real safety gaps, as the interior ministers have a bit of a spotty record lately. On November 16th this year, 2025, as many as 20,000 fans representing more than 50 clubs from all over Germany and all across the football pyramid marched in Leipzig under the slogan Der Fußball ist sicher, Schluss mit Populismus, Ja zur Fankultur. Football is safe, stop populism, and yes to fan culture, creating a visible, unified national front against the interior minister's direction. At around the same time, ultra groups organized match day protests, particularly 12 minutes of silence at the start of virtually every game in Germany, something that would be completely unmissable. Anyone who watched from the start of a German game, unless maybe a Leipzig at home game, would have noticed the silence. It was completely unmissable, especially if you've ever watched Bundesliga before in your life, where it's usually roaring from the first minute, usually to the 90th. They even had large tifos, like Gladbach had a tifo with fans holding up sign 9 for no. They forced TV media and neutral fans to confront it. There was no way to dodge this. Their protests were unmissable. Even just by the contrast when they started again and were so loud and they unfurled the flags and the banners, like they certainly know how to draw the attention. When the IMK met in Bremen for from the 3rd to the 5th of December, just last week basically, Werder Bremen fans and others held demonstrations there under the slogan for Fankultur and Freiheitsrechte, for fan culture and civil liberties, warning that football was being used as a test laboratory for surveillance and control measures, which seems fair because that's exactly what it sounds like. Under this combined pressure, the IMK's final decisions did not introduce mandatory personalized tickets. They did not authorize facial recognition in stadiums, and did not adopt a blanket policy of cutting away tickets, backing away from the harshest ideas. The IMK did decide to create a central stadium ban oversight body, supervising local commissions, to push clubs into more professional prevention and security structures, and to keep pyro officially illegal while talking about continued dialogue rather than a new mega crackdown, meaning that at the very least the fans put off basically everything, and some things seem pretty dead. Some ideas seem pretty dead now. After Bremen, the fans claimed a partial victory. This is stopping the worst measures. The DFB and DFL said the result confirmed their line of safe stadiums and targeted action, and the IMK portrayed it as a balanced security package, leaving the big unresolved question of whether this central stadium ban system will become a narrow oversight tool or a future instrument for broader surveillance and control of fan culture. We should know more in the spring after the spring IMK. I'm sure the remaining subjects will be on the agenda there. It's also worth noting that with the status of Pyro still up in the air, but currently unchanged, the week since the IMK has seen no shortage of epic Pyro displays all across Germany, and this list is in no way all inclusive or covering everything, because there was Pyro seemingly at almost every game. But some of the ones that I saw that really stood out was Hamburg's Pyro at halftime in the Nord Derby against Werder Bremen. Dusseldorf's Ultras, I think they were celebrating the 25th anniversary of their Ultras, had a incredible pyro and fireworks display with the before their game against Schalke in the Zweite Bundesliga. And Bayern's home Champions League match versus Sporting Lisbon, where they had a wall of fire along the front of the Ultras section at the start of the second half. Or no, it might have been in the first half. I don't have my timing exactly right, but it was incredible. So for now, the unified actions of German fans have forced the interior ministers to retreat and step down from their plans, but the German fan scene stresses that vigilance remains essential. And that kind of vigilance is why they tend to win so much. This brings us to the incident in Wolfsburg this week involving Union Berlin's traveling supporters. We'll start with Union's away trip to Wolfsburg last season, because that's where the story actually begins. Last season at the away end to the Volkswagen Arena in Wolfsburg, an Union fan was refused entry by stewards for unclear reasons. It seems even to this day it remains unclear. No one seems to have an explanation. But that led to a confrontation. Police intervened and claimed Union fans attacked officers, reporting 9 injured officers and 2 fans detained. Eiserne Hilfe, Union's Fan Hilfe, are essentially sort of legal aid, legal advocacy organization. More on them at the end of the story. Described the 2024 operation as massively overblown. Police used pepper spray directly into a tightly packed group of Unioners, injuring fans and creating panic in a situation that could have much easier been de-escalated. In response, organized Union fans chose not to hang their banners or fly their flags during the match. Basically, we reject how we've been treated. That wasn't normal. When Union traveled to Wolfsburg again the past weekend, police treated the match as a follow-up security operation to the 2024 events, not as just a normal away day, with a visibly large pre-planned deployment focused squarely on Union fans. Unioners arriving in Wolfsburg were penned in tight spaces and effectively kettled or blocked in, surrounded by the police. Photo and video from the scene, which you can see on Fascination Fan Curve, show they were backed against the river right outside the stadium. Hundreds were treated as a suspect pool, while so-called scene-knowledgeable officers tried to pick out supposed 2024 offenders, including at least one person who hadn't even been in Wolfsburg the year before. So definitely good intel there. Police say they carried out justified ID checks, faced resistance and minor assaults, and had one lightly injured police officer, plus a few temporary detentions. Eiserne Hilfe, on the other hand, and fan reports, supported by circulating video of the events, say quite the opposite, of course. Repeated aggressive incursions by riot police into the crowd, rough grabs, several injured fans, some needing medical treatment, several needing medical treatment, and no genuine attempt at de-escalation, once again. From a pro-fan perspective, the key point is that the main danger at both matches came from the policing tactics. Pepper spray into tight crowds in 2024, and tight kettling and forced snatch operations in 2025, including looking for someone who wasn't even there. The measures alleged to protect safety actually increased crush and panic risk for the ordinary away supporters. But of course, in both years, mainstream headlines centered on attacks on police and injured officers. while fan injuries, kettling, and questionable tactics only appeared in fan and left media and Fanhilfe statements. This fits the usual pattern where active fan scenes are essentially collectively criminalized, and their side of the story only survives because organized fan structures document it. Something worth noting. This is to be a clear example of overzealous policing that escalates rather than de-escalates situations, ultimately leading to more danger for fans and police. If you've ever seen pictures of the police operations surrounding football in Germany, they look ready for war, even when nothing's happening. Now, I promised a quick breakdown of the Fanhilfe organizations like Eiserne Hilfe, so I'll hit that real quick before we move on to our next story. Fanhilfen are by fans, for fans, legal solidarity groups, essentially. They run match day emergency hotlines. They give immediate legal advice and connect fans to specialist lawyers and help with legal costs. They publish guides on dealing with police, bans, and databases, and publicly document and challenge repressive operations like the one in Wolfsburg. Eiserne Hilfe is Union's Fanhilfe and part of the National Fanhilfe umbrella organization, or community. In Wolfsburg, they played exactly the role they exist for. They collected testimonies, named failures of the scene expert officers, highlighting fan injuries and framing both matches as examples of how police and politics are tightening the screws on active fan culture, and why organized legal solidarity is now a core part of modern resistance. Next, we're off to Glasgow to discuss the conflict between Celtic and the Ultras group, the Green Brigade. So let's start with who the Green Brigade are. The Green Brigade are Celtic's main Ultras group in the North Curve rail seating section, the real engine of Celtic Park's legendary atmosphere, and to some, the cultural stewards of the ethical history of Celtic Football Club, a club founded on charity and solidarity. So why don't the club leadership and football authorities like them? Well, they're openly anti-fascist, strongly pro-Palestine, and proudly political. That clashes with UEFA's no politics rules, and with a Celtic board that increasingly wants a sponsor-friendly, de-risked stadium product. Just like I'm sure the founders of Celtic themselves wanted all those years ago. In 2023, the club suspended around 250 Green Brigade season tickets, officially for serious issues like pyros and access breaches, but in practice right after big pro-Palestine displays. From a fan perspective, that looked like the board's first big attempt to discipline and depoliticize the Curve. Although I imagine they've probably been at it for quite some time now. In July 2025, the board quietly put a suspended sanction on the Green Brigade, explicitly linked, according to the Celtic Trust, to previous Palestine displays that many Celtic fans supported. That sanction sat in the drawer waiting for a pretext, and during the League Cup tie versus Falkirk on August 15th this year, Celtic claim a steward was assaulted during a routine ticket check in the rail seating area. When police tried to arrest the fan, around 100 Green Brigade members allegedly rescued him, allegedly abusing and assaulting stewards and 2 officers in a confined space. Celtic's statement describes violent and threatening behavior, officers shaken and traumatized, and a coordinated group trying to obstruct an arrest, and says this automatically triggers that suspended sanction. How convenient. 3-game home ban, plus the away games in between, amounting to a 6-game ban on the Green Brigade. The Green Brigade, on the other hand, say that Falkirk incident is being used as a pretext to activate a punishment that was really about silencing Palestine solidarity, and especially anti-board sentiment. They point out the club released a short, low-quality clip of fans leaving the section, but not the full CCTV that could show the context of what happened. Funny, because these stadiums have so many cameras, and I imagine we probably very rarely get to see any of these incidents. It just probably disappears. For months, fans in the rail seating area have complained of overbearing stewarding, repeated ticket check barriers, and an increasingly aggressive policing posture. A common thread you'll find in policing of football fans pretty much everywhere. The Green Brigade and others say they emailed detailed concerns to the club and were ignored until suddenly the same environment is used to justify a mass punishment. The club have effectively banned everyone registered as Green Brigade with the club's ticketing system, hundreds of people, because of one incident involving a small number of individuals, some of whom are now being processed through the courts. From a pro-fan perspective, that's classic collective punishment, with almost no transparent investigation. The Celtic Trust calls it wholesale collective punishment and directly questions the board's motives and process. Like, why did it take 8 months to admit proven police misconduct on London Road, but just 9 days to hammer fans with a ban, and without releasing full evidence? They tie it to broader shareholder rights and democracy issues at the club. The Green Brigade and friendly outlets argue that the real red line for the board isn't pyros, it's Palestine. That the suspended sanction was triggered by them leaving their block to fly Palestinian flags. The new ban lands right after the fresh banners accusing Celtic and UEFA of complicity over Israel. Seen from the Curva, this is about policing which politics are allowed at Celtic Park. Green Brigade members have already defied the ban at least once by entering via other fans' tickets and unveiling protest banners, and the club has responded by closing the front rows of the rail seating section indefinitely and publicly accusing Green Brigade reps of directly threatening the head of security, or head of safety. It's a classic spiral. More repression is met with more defiance in the fight for Celtic's soul. The immediate football fallout is obvious. The legendary Celtic Park noise and choreography are badly weakened. Other groups are trying to fill the gap, but you can't just replace a decade of Ultras organization overnight. Meanwhile, the sport is split between those who think Green Brigade did overstep at Falkirk and those who see this as a blatant board power grab. I mean, probably people who feel both of those things. Underneath the headlines, this is a fight over who is going to own Celtic's identity. A board and corporate partners who want control of what's sung, shown, and said in the stadium, or a politically conscious supporter culture that sees Celtic Park as a living terrace, not a TV set. Safety language is the battleground, cultural and political control is the prize for the winner. From a fan's point of view, the Green Brigade case is a textbook of modern football. A vocal ultras group that built the club's famous atmosphere is threatened with erasure via safety and reputation rhetoric, while their political stances and civil rights claims are sidelined. However you feel about their tactics on that one night against Falkirk, the scale and style of the response tells you everything about where power currently sits in football, and why organized rights-literate fan movements are now as essential as the songs themselves. Which takes us to 3 stories at the heart of modern football and the heart of UEFA and FIFA, money. Beginning in Milan, where the Curva Sud have faced issues with their own club, AC Milan. For this past weekend's match in Torino, between Torino and Milan, away end tickets for Milan fans were priced at €40, despite the exact same sector being priced at €25 when Como and Cremonese visited recently. Curva Sud published the comparison and called it out directly, saying prices have doubled in Torino too amid Milan's complicit silence. The key is that the Curva Sud aren't just blaming Torino, they accuse AC Milan of failing to defend their own supporters from price gouging. If your club won't fight a blatant gouge on you, you're effectively saying that the people in the Curva are just premium revenue streams, not part of the club's heart. This comes on the heels of another controversy. Curva Sud's new main banner, Sodalizio Rossonero, had been formally cleared and used at multiple games. Then before the derby, the prosecutor suddenly banned it with vague talks of new checks, despite the term being common and allowed elsewhere in Italy. That feels less like security to me and more like trying to erase the Ultras' collective identity by targeting the name itself. The Curva Sud had a response. They left their physical banners at home and answered with pure creativity. In the derby, they used their phone lights to literally spell Sodalizio across the Curva. It's pretty cool. It's a good piece of creativity on their part. So as they show, you can ban a piece of fabric, but it's a lot harder to ban collective imagination. I'm sure they're working on it, but the Ultras endure. That's classic Ultra resistance, make the repression visible, and then turn it into a statement. Put together, the €45 away ticket and Sodalizio ban are the same message from the Curva. We're being squeezed on price and how we're allowed to exist. If fans don't push back now, away days become a luxury hobby, and ultras become a branding asset that only exists when the authorities approve the wording. Speaking of branding assets, that brings us back to Germany and the battle over who controls the history and symbols of a club. For the first time, Borussia Mönchengladbach have sold their stadium naming rights. From 2026, Borussia-Park becomes Ista Borussia-Park in a multi-year deal reportedly worth around 4.5 to 6 million euros per season with the energy firm Ista. The club stresses that Borussia stays in the name and calls it a vital revenue boost. For years, though, Gladbach have prided themselves on not selling the stadium name, something that is now actually very rare in Germany. Even while others cashed in, they did not sell out. That was part of the club's identity, one of the last big grounds without a sponsor stuck on the front. If I remember correctly, only the Stadion an der Alten Försterei in Köpenick and the Milan in Hamburg for St. Pauli have their original names. The Haasfaus Stadium also has its original name, but it is owned, but the person who owns it just chose to go with the original name. So, but as far as I know, that's the last three in the top division. For the Nordkurve and many members, this just isn't just a business decision. It's the board crossing a red line set by the fans that had held for 20 years. The deal leaked before it was properly discussed, and active supporter groups like FPMG criticized both the process and the outcome, saying members and matchgoers were basically spectators in a decision about their own cultural home. It's the classic pattern: the people who are the atmosphere hear about it in the press after it's effectively done. From a pro-fan point of view, the fact Borussia survives in a double name doesn't change the core shift. The stadium name is now a commodity. Once you accept that logic, future boards can argue over details: bigger sponsor, shorter brandable name. But the taboo is gone then. Today it's Ista Borussia-Park. Tomorrow, maybe it'll just be Ista Arena. Fans see this as the first crack in the wall. If a club that held out this long will sell the stadium name under financial pressure, then no symbol at the club is truly safe. Once the business model says everything is for sale, where does that line get drawn? That brings us to England and a rare show of unity across all the fan scenes of the top flight of English football. In England, 116 supporter groups and fan advisory boards from every Premier League club have signed a joint FSA letter demanding a 2-season freeze on home ticket prices. That's a rare moment of pan-league unity. Rivals on the pitch saying we stand together off of it. It's very common in Germany, and it's good to see it becoming more prominent in England. The letter calls for 3 big changes: a 2-year price freeze, real transparency on how clubs set ticket prices, and it's structured dialogue with fan groups before any future increases. They're not asking for anything unreasonable. They're asking to stop the annual creeping hike and to be treated as stakeholders in their club instead of exploitable customers. The backdrop to this is actually pretty brutal. 19 of 20 clubs raised their ticket prices in 24-25. And 13 raised them again this season, in a league already drowning in broadcast and commercial revenue. Fans see owners spending wildly on wages and agents while still coming back to squeeze fans for just another 5 or 10%, and they've had enough, as they should. The letter's sharpest line is that supporter loyalty, quote, shouldn't be maximized for profit, and that's the heart of it from a pro-fan perspective. Clubs are treating generational emotional attachment as a pricing lever, not as a foundation they have a duty to protect, especially in a cost of living crisis. What's powerful here is the method: cross-club coordination, shared data, concrete proposals. Again, tactics you will see in Germany all the time, and it's great to see them in England. It's not just a protest banner outside one ground. It's fans trying to force the league into a rules-based approach to affordability. Shows that it's not just the Germans that can work together in solidarity against common exploitation, and I'm proud to see the English finally uniting together in solidarity. Hopefully they see the fight through to the end. Put these 3 stories together and you've got the same war in 3 languages. Curva Sud facing €45 away tickets and banned banners in Italy. Gladbach fans watching the first slice of their stadium name sold to a sponsor in Germany, and Premier League supporters demanding a stop to endless price hikes in England. From a fan perspective, it's one question: is football a living commons that ordinary people can afford and shape? Or is it a luxury product where fans are just scenery for the cameras? I would say maybe just money to be extracted. There's no neutral here. Every ticket price, every naming deal, every band banner is another front of that fight. Speaking of fight, now to the battle on the French Riviera, where the Ultras of Nice have essentially broken up with their club. Nice aren't just having a wobble, they're in free fall at the moment. Heavy defeats and a record losing streak, and now a massive break between the club and its Ultras. The Ultras' anger isn't about one bad Sunday, it's about years of drift and humiliation. After the 3-1 loss at Lorient, hundreds of fans, not just one group, went to the training center to confront the team, shouting, demanding effort, demanding answers. Pretty normal in Ultras logic. You don't boo from the couch, you tell them to their faces. The official line from the club and the players' communique was that several players and sporting director Flora and Maurice were physically attacked, spat on, and are now dealing with ongoing physical and psychological consequences. The language painted a picture of outright assault. The Ultras' answer, on the other hand: we didn't organize this. We went there like everyone else, and we didn't see the beatings being described. They point to police and prefecture documents that talk about a hostile atmosphere, but do not record injuries or emergency responses that night. From their view, someone is inflating or inventing details to criminalize supporters. When Jean-Claude Blanc, CEO of Ineos Sport, the owners of Nice and partial owners of Manchester United, comes out and backs the players' version and condemns violence, it reads to the Curva as the billionaire owners closing ranks with their employees, treating the Ultras account and the official report as irrelevant noise. Power lines are clear. We believe our staff, not you. The Ultras of Populaire Sud released a communique that goes line by line. They say players who sign a statement they see as full of lies and fantasy, a coach who used the Curva's support when he was on the ropes, then turned overnight to pose in unity with the squad, directors who never defend the fans, Ineos turning the training ground into Maison Ineos, with the club's identity stripped from the walls. The message: none of you are acting like this is our club anymore. The key sentence translates essentially as, we are no longer interested in you. The Ultras flip the usual script. It's not, are fans still interested in the team? It's, you no longer interest us. When they write that the Masons, students, and unemployed are going back to their real families, they're saying, we've given our voices and our time for decades. If you treat us as criminals and useful idiots, we're done with you. The boycott is the nuclear option in ultra culture. Populaire Sud have called on their 4,000 plus to stay away from the Allianz Riviera for the next games, Angers in the league and Braga in Europe. For a group that lives for being there, that's not a tantrum, it's the strongest sanction they have. Taking their songs, flags, and bodies out of the picture, and letting the club hear what emptiness sounds like. This isn't about excusing everything that happened. It's about refusing a one-sided criminal story. A pro-fan perspective doesn't have to say every second of that protest was perfect. It says if you want to talk about violence, you have to prove it, and you have to listen to all sides, including the people who were actually in the crowd and the police documents. You don't get to erase the Curva's testimony just because it's inconvenient. This is a textbook example of how clubs use ultras until they become awkward. When tifos look good on the TVs and on the brochures and the team is winning, ultras are the heartbeat of the club. The moment results tank and supporters confront players directly, suddenly they're thugs and hooligans and a PR problem. Populaire Sud are basically saying, we see the game you're playing, and we're not playing our role in it anymore. The real power of ultras is presence, and they've just withdrawn it. Banners and social posts matter, but the real leverage is thousands of bodies turning concrete terraces into a living end. By walking away, Populaire Sud are reminding everyone that the atmosphere, the visual identity, the sense that a club is alive, none of that comes from Ineos headquarters. It comes from the people who now have been alienated. At its core, we're no longer interested in you, is a warning to the whole game. Nice is just one club, but the message echoes everywhere. If you treat fans as a security risk and a branding asset instead of co-owners of the club's soul, there will come a day when they simply stop showing up. And when that day comes, you don't just lose noise, you lose the thing that makes football more than a TV product. Which takes us to our final story of the week and another fan base that has had enough and is taking concrete action. For Wolves' game against Manchester United at Molineux on Monday night, fan group Old Gold Pack led a 15-minute boycott. Thousands of Wolves fans stayed outside or away from their seats for the opening phase, and then walked in together in 15 minutes. The target wasn't the players, it was owner Fosun and chairman Jeff Shee. The issues: managed decline, poor recruitment, rising prices, and a complete lack of direction. This wasn't just one angry fan group, though, either. Within days, 9+ major fan platforms and groups backed it, including Wolves 1877 Trust, Talking Wolves, Wolves Fancast, The Wolves Report, Wolves 77 Club, Always Wolves, Punjabi Wolves, and the Wolf Pack, among others. They framed it as a peaceful, coordinated statement. We love the club, but we're done being treated like background noise while it's run into the ground. For the first 15 minutes, cameras panned over the sparsely populated south and north banks. Then at 15 minutes, a wave of fans arrived together and the noise kicked in, with "She Out" chants and banners following. From a pro-fan perspective, the optics were perfect. You couldn't watch that game without seeing that something wasn't right between Wolves and its supporters. National and local coverage all picked it up. BBC, papers, blogs, everyone led with the boycott and the anger at the owners. Local journalists openly wrote about a toxic atmosphere around the club and a broken relationship with the fans. And even neutral outlets framed Wolves as a club in crisis whose fans had clearly had enough. Now, in hard terms, there has been no U-turn on prices, no grand apology, no ownership change. Yet. But it changed the conversation. Fosun and Shee are now under a public reputational spotlight they can't easily duck. And any future decisions on managers, recruitment, pricing will all be judged against this very visible fan revolt. If we've learned anything from Germany, the key is to keep up the pressure and to not back down. They could probably also take some lessons about how to be creative. RC cars, perhaps, not suggesting anything. From a pro fan angle, the 15-minute boycott is a textbook first step. It's peaceful, organized, highly visible, proves the Wolves supporters can move together and put ownership on the defensive. It didn't fix the club. Protests on their own like this usually don't. But it shattered the illusion that fans will sit quietly and just swallow the decline while paying more for less. And I mean, I watched the game. The Wolves were not very good. Now the real question is whether they keep building from that foundation or let the moment fade. I hope they keep it up. I hope all fans that fight for the soul of football support them in their struggle. I'll certainly keep you up to date as this story develops. That brings us to the end of our fan news roundup for this week. I send my love and support to all the fans fighting for football, fighting for their clubs, and fighting for each other. I round off this week's episode with a quick look back at the matches I watched this past week, including several that showed up in the news, and a look ahead to the matches I'll be watching or keeping an eye on in the week to come. On Saturday, of course, I watched Wolfsburg Union. That was actually what first alerted me to the story about the Union supporters in Wolfsburg. Was I noticed that there was no banners or flags out, so I started to investigate and eventually came upon the story. Wolfsburg did win 3-1. Also, somehow ended up watching MLS Cup instead of Lens, but I really wanted to see if Thomas Wooler could win a trophy in his first season in MLS, but of course Messi won. Inter Miami won 3-1. And yeah, not much more to say about it than that. The atmosphere is good. MLS has pretty good atmospheres. The fan scenes are good, even if the product is very hyper-commercialized. I did keep an eye on, I just checked in a little bit on non-hosting Lens. Florian Thauvin scored again. Can't stop scoring at the moment. The talisman for Lens this season. And with that, they stayed top, despite PSG winning handily in their game as well. So Lens on top another week, heading back to the Boycott this weekend. Also saw the beginning of the Franken Derby between Nuremberg and Greuther Fürth. Great tifos before the match. I encourage you to find the videos and the pictures on social media if you can. They're in my reposts on Instagram. Nuremberg had a great one of it was like a medieval painting of the old Nuremberg city, and Greuther Fürth had one celebrating the anniversary of their city Rathaus or city hall. It was both excellent. Sunday caught the second half of Celtic against Hearts at Celtic Park. Hearts won that game to go back top of the table, but the most notable thing to me was the atmosphere is really dead. It sounded like a 12-minute protest in Germany. Really seems to have taken the vim and vigor out of the whole place to ban a couple hundred Green Brigaders. New Celtic manager made his debut as well, Wilfried Nancy, and immediately became a meme for his use of the magnetic tactics board on the sideline, but I thought that his reaction to that at his press conference was quite serene. The match of the weekend was definitely the Nord Derby in Hamburg between HSV and Werder Bremen. Definite match of the season contender. Had two great tifos to start the game. HSV's Nord Tribune had a Kämpfen und Siegen, alles riskieren. Fight and win, risk it all banner across the entire Nord Tribune, both levels of the stadium. And Werder had a little switcher up. They had a banner or a little tifo, a sizable tifo with the banner deine Fahne in der Curva, your flag in the curve, and then they modified it so that the flag became a lighter, and they lit some flares to make the flame with the and switched to the banner Feuer nur für dich, unser Feuer nur für dich, our fire only for you. It was great to see. It's been a while for the Nord Derby, a couple of years, so, and especially in the Bundesliga. So that was definitely great. Huge second half pyro show as well from the Nord Tribune. Just tons of general pyro from both sides. I mean, two port cities, gonna be lots of flares lying around. But an amazing pyro show from the HSV fans at the start of the second half, or just before the start of the second half. If you can go back and watch the game, even just for that, it was quite impressive. It's also goal of the season candidate from HSV center back Luka Vuskovic with a scorpion kick-esque goal off a free kick. And the late winner for HSV came from their new captain this season, the veteran Yusuf Poulsen, in front of the Nord Tribune, his first for his club. That was quite the capper on an amazing game. Right up there with Scotland, Denmark in my personal match of the season rankings. It's a great match, but even better atmosphere. Can't wait for the reverse in Bremen next year. Next calendar year. Also watched Napoli Juventus on the late cap on Sunday night. Napoli hosting for them their biggest rivals at the Maradona under the lights. Rasmus Højlund scored a pair to win a game that Napoli largely controlled. Great atmosphere at the Maradona, and with Napoli leading for most of the game, had excellent noise from the home crowd. Didn't hear too much from the traveling Juventus fans, certainly not under the roar of the Napoli faithful. Napoli went back top with that, but went second on Monday after Milan won in Torino, going back ahead of them on goal difference. The last game was Monday, Wolves Manchester United. Ended up being an easy Manchester United win. Wolves looked shocking, honestly, dismal. But the 15-minute fan protest was definitely the highlight of the game anyway. And now for the week to come. Friday, I'll be watching Union Berlin hosting most German football fans' least favorite energy drink advertisement, masquerading as a club, Rasenballsport Leipzig. Expect an atmosphere boycott at the first ride to start the game. Nothing to do with the IMK this time. It's just standard practice when the Bundesliga's most plastic franchise comes to Köpenick. Something I saw as far back as their very first home match in the Bundesliga. The one I talked about in the last podcast, that did a 10, 15, 5-6 years now. But I think they did a 15-minute atmosphere boycott. So that was also an interesting note that I don't think I mentioned in the podcast last week. Always a match I circle on the calendar. That's one of the big ones for me as an Union fan. Also on Friday, Dynamo Dresden host Eintracht Braunschweig in the Zweite Bundesliga. Might seem like a bit of an odd choice, but I've been waiting a long time to check out Dynamo at home. The zone in Canada only covers 2 to 3 Zweite Bundesliga games a week, despite having the full rights. So it's been a while. Dynamo don't get on very often. They tend to go more for Hertha and Schalke. Will be one of the most intense atmospheres in German football, Dresden, and they'll be welcoming another of the Zweite Bundesliga's most intense fan scenes, Eintracht Braunschweig, to their Rudolf Habig Stadion. And I don't know how the football will be, but the atmosphere should be electric. On Saturday, I'll be checking out some French football with a Breton derby between Rennes and Brest. While I have been mainly following RC Lens this season, also very, in France at least, I'm also very interested in the Breton clubs and their culture, so I'm looking forward to a solid Breton derby there. The Brittany region of France. Also on the agenda on Saturday, I'll be checking out FC Köln away to local rivals Leverkusen. It's not quite Cologne against Gladbach, but still a really solid local derby. The only thing that would make it better would be if it was in Cologne, but we'll get that in the second half of the season. Sunday, I'll be starting my morning in Gelsenkirchen for Schalke against Nuremberg. There's some traditional Giants energy here, but I mainly always just jump at the chance to watch Schalke home games. The atmosphere at the Veltins Arena is one of my favorite in Germany, and with them riding high at the top of the table, good for Loris Karius in goal. It should be even more electric, and bonus, I'll get to see my old favorite Fußballgott, Robin Knoche, for the first time since he left Union. He had the captain's armband on for Nuremberg in the derby this past weekend. The middle game on Sunday will be the Tyne Weir derby, Sunderland hosting Newcastle at the Stadium of Light for the first time in almost 10 years. Not huge on the Premier League myself, but this is the kind of occasion I can't pass up. Proper English rivalry, one of the greatest derbies of English football. If I had more time, I'd also tune in for Crystal Palace hosting Man City at Selhurst Park. The Holmesdale Fanatics will have the place rocking, as they always do. I love that Selhurst energy. But not enough time to watch all of the matches, because last up on my watch list on Sunday is Lens hosting, in crisis, Nice at the Stade Bollaert de la Lille. I can't imagine from what we now know that there will be much, if any, Nice away presence. But the Bollaert will be rocking for the return of their club, who have not played at home since going top of the table for the first time in 21 years with their away win at Angers the week before last. Should be absolutely electric. Don't miss it. And be sure to catch the singing of their club anthem, Le Grand, before the second half kickoff. One of the great club anthems of European football, one of my favorites. That brings us to the end of another episode of the Soul of Football podcast. I welcome any feedback on the stories, the podcast, or anything you'd like to hear about in future episodes. If you like what I do, you can follow me on Instagram and Spotify, and subscribe on YouTube, Soul of Football Podcast. If you love what I do, you can support me on Ko-Fi. If you want to see pictures and videos of some of the best tifos, choreos, pyros each week, check out my reposts on my Instagram. I always try to gather as many of them as I can in there. And be sure to give the original accounts a like and follow if you want them. If you want that right from the source. Also, if you're wanting more reporting on fan news and don't mind it being in German, check out Fascination Fan Curva. It's a website, fascinationfancurva.com. Just Google it. For great written and visual coverage of the fan scenes, especially in German-speaking Europe. I think most browsers have auto-translate, so it's still a great resource even if you don't speak German. Once again, my name is Kevin. Thanks for sticking with me all the way to the end. Support your local fan scenes. Remember, football is a community, not a commodity. And never forget, love is the answer.